Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. This month we're cruising down the streets of cinema. First up is Mulholland Drive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead.
Before anything else, we would like to sincerely apologize for the espresso. It came highly recommended.
Oh my god.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Reels on the Rocks.
See, I thought you were going to use the line of, "Oh, for you I will." Or whatever she says.
There you go. Well, we are rounding out the year. We've only got a few episodes left before... Well, we've only got one episode left before our finale. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, very excited. We're talking about a director I've been wanting to talk about since the beginning of the show. But before any of that, we're talking about A24.
Yes.
So, and I'm glad we decided not to talk about... Well, I mean, part of it was like, we're trying to figure out current events to talk about at the beginning of episodes, and around the time I heard about this was like when we were recording our last episode or episodes. But so if any of you listening haven't heard, so A24 is a big independent studio. They've gotten very profitable over the last couple of years doing horror movies, but they do everything. They do all sorts of stuff.
They do weird original horror movies, like not like horror movies like Blumhouse horror movies, ones that are...
No, not like Blumhouse, not like The Conjuring or anything like that. They do, but that's the thing, like a lot of them have made as much money as some of those, depending on which one it is. But they're one of the last studios that really like work with, not famous directors. And that was kind of where I was with this news like a month ago when I was talking to you about it. So what broke like a month ago is that they are apparently not shelving, like they're still going to be making movies, but they're kind of going in the direction of more high profile IPs.
Right, yeah.
And I had some feelings about it, but part of the reason I'm happy that it took a while for us to get to this topic is because one of their high-profile IP projects has been announced since the last thing, at least announced to me. I didn't know about this, but it came out recently that they are doing a Friday the 13th TV show called Crystal Lake.
Oh, so they're behind that. Because I remember, I think I told you a while ago that they were seriously after the rights to Friday the 13th. I think they were competing with like Universal for it or something, but they wanted the rights to Friday the 13th.
I've learned a lot since our review of Friday the 13th that all of you should definitely check out because we reviewed it several years ago. And
it contains one of the first examples of a Karen doxing somebody.
Yeah, and that Karen is Roger Ebert. But anyway, so I've learned a lot about that franchise since that came out. I also didn't realize some other it's a good review, but I didn't know, for instance, that Cunningham, the director and kind of creator of the franchise, came up with the title before he came up with the story. Basically, he bought the rights to Friday the 13th just because it's like that title will sell movie tickets. Like everyone will, oh my God, that sounds really cool. And he was right. So he got a screenwriter to write the first movie. And so the funny thing about the rights with Friday the 13th is that it is a very convoluted mess because of the way he went about going. So the screenwriter has the rights to a lot of things from that first movie.
Yeah.
Like, Little Kid Jay, like pretty much that movie he has full rights to, but Cunningham has the rights to everything else. And that's also where there have been issues with like the video game I talked about in that review. And
I have that video game.
We should try.
We should do a play together on that.
Maybe we should. It is fun, and since it came out, they fixed a lot of the technical bugs, and I think they've added. The thing is, like when the game came out, it was kind of novel, but now I think it's sort of been overshadowed by Dead by Daylight because you've got all sorts of different monsters you can play as if you're the the one stalking everybody.
Yeah.
But so if A24 was having issues, I doubt it had anything to do with like it being difficult to get the rights. It was probably just that like mess of who owns what part of the franchise that they had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was interesting. The other thing about that is the showrunner. I guess it's the showrunner. The IMDb is weird because they don't, they had a director, Steven Dodson, but like it's weird. They don't even have a created by credit yet for some reason, but supposedly the showrunner is going to be Brian Fuller, who did the Hannibal series on NBC, which, have you ever watched it? Because you're a huge fan of Silence of the Lambs.
I haven't. I was waiting for them to get to the Clarice seasons.
And
they never got there. Yeah, it ended way early.
Yeah, so, but you should probably check it out. From what I understand, it's like a really good show, and I know you're a fan of that series.
Listen, I loved the Clarice series when CBS did it, and unfortunately it only lasted a season, which makes me sad because it was bomb.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're the only one who was disappointed that the show ended. I remember, I never watched it either, but I remembered everyone was raving about it while it was on TV. I guess it was one of those where everyone liked it, but nobody watched it. Because I don't know why else they would have canceled it, but it was also like a big springboard for Mads Mikkelsen. Like that was like his first big role. I mean, like, well, he was
nice
like a
whiskey,
Bond villain
blaming.
before that.
You're victim blaming.
Victim blaming?
I mean, if you think about it, basically horror characters are supposed to work by victim blaming. Like, we're not supposed to feel bad for them, like, because they all deserve it.
Kind of. I mean, that's speaking of like Friday the 13th in particular. That's something that's kind of interesting about Jason is he's so like, yes, he's murdering teenagers, but his backstory is pretty tragic, and it's kind of fun. Like, we talked about it in the review, but like, in slashers, it's like, oh, don't have sex or you're gonna die, and it's like, well, that was started in Friday the 13th, and there was a reason for it. It's because they were too busy having sex to save him from drowning. So it's like, no, that's kind of more just this series. But yeah, the IMDb page is very sparse. They've got Frank Volpe, a guy I have never heard of, playing Jason, and I checked his past credits, and he has not really been in anything notable, and the only thing they have for the story is a group of friends vacation at a house that has a dark past. So I don't know. The fact that A24 is attached is pretty neat. I love the fact that the Hannibal showrunner is supposedly taking the reins of it. But that's kind of... my tune has changed. The reason I was somewhat upset when I heard about that was because, as I told you, I think if you ask like an A24 fanboy or fangirl why they're popular, they would be like, oh, their stuff's so deep and intellectual. And I take a more grounded approach to... I think they are popular because they're
weird.
they're one of the only things making new IPs, or at least like new movies. Like when you think of like successful movies these days, it's always like superhero movies or sequels or prequels, or it's always based on something or like a reboot of something. A24, regardless of their style, they're really kind of the only people making anything new, and I think that is more why they're successful than their artistic qualities. Because like, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, like there's other studios like Neon's one, Village Roadshow, obviously a lot of the big indie things like Fox Searchlight and stuff, but like as far as just having a pretty consistent quality of films, and as far as like multiple releases a year, like I can you think of anything else, like, if again, not a Marvel movie, not a reboot of some series or movie that we've that's already established. Like, can you think of like another studio that really like has an output of new IPs or new movies?
I really can't on this big of a scale. I do, however, want to circle back to what you said about why you think they're popular. And I want to
Yes.
caution you because people said that when Oppenheimer did so well, they're like, oh, everyone's like craving for these new, fresh, original stories, and they thought because Oppenheimer did so well that Killers of the Flower Moon was going to do super well, and then that bombed. So I'm still not sure if anybody really knows why the
Well,
movies
those
do
I would
well.
argue. Well, to anyone who says that, I would argue Oppenheimer is based on both of those are based on true stories, and Killers of the Flower Moon was a book first.
Well, so was
So
Oppenheimer.
that's what I mean. I'm talking about just fresh ideas. These days you don't really like, you go back to kind of the golden age of fun movies. You don't get movies like Back to the Future or Indiana Jones or anything like that. And I'm not talking because obviously there was a new Indiana Jones this year, but I just mean like new ideas that are not based on anything.
So this is
Like when
this is my take on it. My take is the reason we have such a drought of, like you said, those movies that were just so good and they were so original and so fresh, like Indiana Jones and Back to the Future, which ironically became franchises. But when they first came out,
yeah,
they were original, they were fresh, they were interesting. I think right now there's two problems. There's one problem is the fact that studios, because they're just so cash conscious, I think this has been said a million times, are just they're not willing to take risks on stuff that's not a guaranteed moneymaker. And then two, I think the other problem is when we do get new, fresh, interesting movies, they're weird. Like they're these bizarre, almost like snobby movie people films. They're not for the most part. I mean, some do come out every now and then, like Talk to Me. That was not made for that crowd, but because of that, it's like there's no connect with the audience on a wide scale, and that's one of the things that I do think that there's still sort of this what's the word I'm looking for some reason people don't seem to think making original and interesting, I hate this term, but you'll know what I mean, popcorn films
yeah.
are are worthy to be made. It always has to be something about some deep, dark meaning or have some huge, grand message. It's just like, or you could make movies. I read this in an article a while ago, and I'm going to apply it to this. I wish I remembered who wrote this article, but they were talking. It was in the New York Times. It was talking about this woman was cooking. She was talking about cooking in her family and all that sort of stuff. She said she remembers she was having a food critic over for dinner, and she called her mom and asked her what she should make, because she was like, should I make this? Should I make this? She's thinking of all these like very complex dishes, and her mom was just like, why don't you just make something that tastes good? And I kind of apply that here with when we have these new creators and new people coming into the in new auteurs, everybody entering the scene, they feel like they have to do all these super deep things. I'm like, or you could just make something that's good. And it's just, and so I hope what I'm saying is it makes sense when I'm talking about. I feel like there's two problems. One is the studios are the problem, but two, I think the incoming auteurs and the auteurs already here, you know, have for some reason they point their noses down at movies that are just good movies but are just fun and interesting. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents as to why there's a drought of those movies.
No, and I don't think you're wrong. One thing that has always really frustrated me is the fact that big studios don't, take chances on new projects. And a lot of that is being cash conscious. But the other thing, and I didn't really, like, over the years, I've kind of learned we're our own worst enemies. Like, as much as a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so sick of remakes and reboots and sequels and whatever, they are the only thing that makes money. It's what the public wants, which is frustrating because people complain about it, but then they go and watch their slop. But the thing that I pushed back on this when we were talking about this outside of the show, like the thing that's interesting about A24 is like you have this kind of stereotype of them just being for like movie bros and stuff. But the thing that has made them so big is that people are going to see their movies. They make them on a smaller budget so that they can be profitable, but they wouldn't be as big as they are today if regular moviegoers who aren't like cinephiles or film students or like, I look at me, I'm so creative type people. Like, the thing that's really amazing about A24 to me is that they've had so many box office successes. And true, like a lot of that has to do with the fact that their budgets aren't as bloated as a lot of these big AAA productions. But it's actually been very encouraging for me as someone who likes weirdo movies to see that like they're drawing in a mainstream crowd. And that's where, yes,
this is, I always put an asterisk by that because the way I look at it is they're only successful because of the context. Because like, let's say, it's a movie, it costs like, let's say 12 million to make for them, and they make 60 million on it. Well, if they had, and it has 60 million dollars worth of people came to see it. Well, let's say that same movie had been produced by a major studio and had it like everything else is actually the same, but maybe they paid more for set designer, they paid more for, and it had a larger budget. Still, the same $60 million people are going to go see it. So that's why I'm always like, when people talk about some movies being successful on their budget and then like, oh, they became great because people went to see them, I'm like, I always put an asterisk there. Well, the same amount of people theoretically would have gone to have seen it if it did have a bigger budget. So
no, and you're right, but that is also kind of what's being considered by the studio, is that they know that it's not going to draw in as big of a crowd.
Yeah.
So they can't make, $300 million budget movies. But the thing I have, because I think I go to more A24 movies than you.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen it. Like when I'm always talking about how one of the reasons I love going to the cinema is because of kind of the community that or the feeling of community you get. Recently you were just talking about Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift has a very diverse fan base. So, you're going to get all sorts of people going to see that movie. The thing that I thought is kind of interesting in my experience with A24 movies, and a little bit of an asterisk because, I lived in LA for such a long time, but I saw a pretty diverse audience. Like, one of my favorite films from the past 5 years was The Lighthouse, and that was a full house, and that was not opening weekend or anything. It was just a random Saturday.
I remember that.
Packed. And same thing, like when I saw things like Midsummer, there was a bunch of like teenagers there. There was all sorts of random people, who weren't like, deep artistic types or anything like that. So I've found it kind of interesting going to see the movies, seeing that it's not like just movie nerds going to see this. And definitely it's not going to attract the same like crowd. But I think it's kind of like you brought up Blumhouse, and the reason they are so successful is because they make things for dirt cheap and they release like 20 movies a year.
That's true, but
like
I point at the quality of Blumhouse though.
Yeah, like the Blumhouse is like a machine gun as far as like productions go. Like they just blind fire, and a few of their movies will turn a profit, and it's enough to keep them going and stuff. A24, usually
it's a little more curated. It's more
curated, and they don't release like 50 movies. They'll release a bunch, a lot more than. And especially like when we were talking about this a week or however long ago we were talking about this, I went to their website to just like look at their like list of movies, and they've got a whole bunch coming out the end of this year. There's like 5 movies or something coming out by them. But,
by the way, since you brought it up, let's talk about their website for a quick minute, because I would like to lodge a small complaint with their merch section. they may be making movies for everybody, but they have a very particular client they want to attract there. Because I remember when I wanted to get you, when the Lighthouse came out, they had A24 put out Lighthouse T-shirts. So I wanted to get you one, and they were selling
Nice. them
them on their website for like $150, and I was like,
BS.
what?
BS.
What? No, that is true. They were doing that.
No, I'm not saying BS is and it's not true. I'm saying no, and I'm agreeing with you. I didn't even know they had a merch section. Like last time I was on their website was just seeing like their full list of movies they made. I don't know what they're thinking. If that's it, like I remember, I think it was like 2017 or 2018, but they were like selling Halloween costumes, and apparently that was like kind of a popular thing. But they weren't. At least I don't think they were crazy expensive. But I mean, they do have kind of like people who are fans of A24 movies are like rabid fans. So it's if they're not making affordable merchandise for people, that's actually really stupid. And I'm in full agreement with you that they should not be selling T-shirts for $150. They should be selling T-shirts for $30, and they should have multiple designs of different movies and stuff because that's that's a whole like passive income almost they could have on top of like ticket sales.
Like
the
here,
other
here we
thing
go. They're selling a Priscilla silver heart locket on their website for $400, and
That's insane, and they should stop doing that. They should sell the lockets for like $40, and they shouldn't be like. I'm guessing the quality is probably really
it's
good.
probably
The
made
T-shirt,
with like silver or something weird like that.
the T-shirt is ridiculous. There is no T-shirt that like I say this fully aware that Supreme exists. If you're buying a T-shirt for more than like $30, you're an idiot. I don't care. I don't care what brand it is. I don't care if it's Gucci. I don't care if it's A24. You're dumb. So no, I'm in full agreement with that. But the other thing I've kind of noticed about them having a more mainstream crowd that you give them credit for, and this is not all of their movies, but one thing, like, especially these days, it's kind of difficult to tell if something's actually popular or if, like, the media is trying to make you think that it's popular. And one way I can kind of, especially, like, streaming platforms, they don't release their viewers or view counts or whatever, the ratings.
Which, personally,
They
I
don't
found
know.
to be quite shady.
It is very shady, but and especially when they'll like kind of push a show as being really popular. But one thing in this era of not knowing how many people are actually watching a show, I've found very like you can tell when a show or a movie is popular because people will talk about it online. And some of the staying power for some A24 movie memes, like I still see new Lighthouse memes. I still see new Midsummer. Midsummer is crazy popular, especially with like women. They love the Midsummer memes. So like, again, it's not just like douchey cinephile type weirdos who like A24. It's maybe not every movie they put out, but like when they have a hit, it is a general hit.
Yeah.
And as far as like my theory for why that is, it just goes to I think that it's because it's new. Like there are other studios putting out new stuff and sometimes even bigger projects. Like we were talking about the Paddington movies. Like that technically was like it was based on a children's book, but that was like a new IP that came out in like 2014. Did super well. The sequel did super well.
Well, the sequel sequel not only did well, but it's one of the most respected films in history.
Oh, highest rated film of all time. We talked about this.
We talked about this, and we talked about how deserved that is.
But I think that the first Paddington even kind of falls into that category. Disney's really getting into this hole they're digging where they're just remaking stuff that they've already done. Outside of like their animation studios are like the only thing churning out anything original, and I think that's why they are way more popular than their live action films. Because,
I wish they would
like,
stop the live action because it loses all the whimsy and fun. Like the Mulan live action was awful because it was basically like watching a historic biopic. It's like, where's the fun? Where's the song? There was no Mushu.
No, there wasn't, and there was also a very controversial leading actress and all sorts of other stuff going on with that one. But yeah, like I have been saying this for years. I don't understand who these movies are for. And there's at least one on my list of things to review during our finale that I'll get into. But it really just, it begs the question, like, unless it is better than the animated film, or at least, like, and there's some other ones. I think last year, Cruella was on the list of things we reviewed. Who knows? I was so drunk last year.
But I will say,
at least that's a
Cruella
well,
was
at least that's a prequel.
It's a prequel, but it was also slightly original because it was kind of taking. It was first off, it was a whole new take on the character because, as you remember, it made the character very sympathetic, and then two,
and it's
it was
thing
inventing
with
an entire backstory for it.
Exactly. Well, and that's the same thing with, like, no one complains about Maleficent, and I think that's the same thing. It's like, because it was at least doing its own thing. Like, all these and there's so many of them. Like, there was a Peter Pan one. There's Aladdin. There's like, and now it's getting to the point, and I'm sure you heard this. They're looking to do a live action remake of Lilo and Stitch. Or not Lilo, sorry, Moana. Lilo and Stitch makes some sense. It's Moana. They're gonna do that soon.
That hasn't even been out for a decade yet.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like, I don't know who they're making them for, but as much as I complain, they keep doing box office. Like, everyone was complaining about Little Mermaid, and it broke records. Yeah. So it's, as I said, like, everyone complains about this stuff, but when it comes to voting with your wallet, everyone's voting for the slop. And I say that with respect, but, it's like, do you actually want new things, or do you just want to relive, do you want the nostalgia fix? I don't know, but that's my 2 cents as far as the A24, why I think they're successful. I do think now that some of their new projects with higher IPs are coming out are like, this sounds good. This sounds like it might actually be good. They've got a good showrunner on board, and it's a TV show, so there might be more seasons. It might, frankly, Peacock needs some wins because I don't really think they've had that many super popular shows.
Also, this isn't their first foray. They have another highly successful show on right now.
A24 does, or Peacock?
A24.
Really? Wait, what was their other show?
Euphoria.
That's A24?
That's A24.
God. Oh, God.
I have some questionable thoughts about that, but that's not necessarily A24's fault. That's really more the creator's
that is a whole
fault.
I got.
Oh, and I think
I won't get into it because this could go on forever. But I did. So I was working on a project recently where the AD worked on Euphoria, and he was asked to work on what was it, The Idol, and he turned it down. And he kind of said because I haven't seen Euphoria, but it's part of the reason I haven't.
Its concept creeps me out.
So here's the thing, and I feel like a lot of people probably feel this way. It looks incredible. Visually, it looks amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do not want to see a teenage, like, drug sex orgy TV show, but just visually, it looks breathtaking. That being said, I've heard of all the problematic content and all that other stuff. It's not really... I've said this on past reviews where we're talking about this. I don't really like high school things unless there's, like, something interesting about it.
You liked Heartstopper.
I liked Heartstopper. We talked about Edge of 17.
Yeah.
There are good high school movies, but it's not really, like, a subject I seek out.
Right.
So
it's like every so often
Euphoria.
Something comes up and it's like, okay, this interests me. I like the way it's written, shown, etc. Also,
Yeah,
I hate to break it to you, A24 also did The Idol.
Ugh. Well, it was the same, like, showrunner. But there you go. Like, I can, and that's where I can be a fan of something and also not like everything that they put out, and same thing with you. Like, I always bring it up because you seem to think that all of their movies are something you wouldn't like, but 8th Grade was A24. They put out a lot of different things.
I know, I admit that begrudgingly.
I think their horror movies are part of the reason why I'm a big fan. But I think if I were someone who was giving them advice, I'd be like, diversify. Like, keep doing what you're doing, just spread out into different genres, which they seem to be doing. That movie, Problemista, you said you liked the trailer, and it looks kind of much more like lighthearted and funny than their
Yeah.
other movies.
Yeah.
So that might be something. But that's what I would say. Like I'm happy they're dipping their toes into the big IPs. So far, it doesn't look like anything that's going to upset me. But as far as their films go, I'd be like, keep doing what you're doing. Just diversify. Get it so that like you still have that kind of artistic quality. Like when people think of A24, they think of quality and they think of kind of unique visions for things. But when everyone thinks of the same sort of like dour, avant-garde, super artsy fartsy, like I think that's kind of where they could make an improvement. Like
Yeah.
I think if everyone just thinks of like unique and quality when they think of A24, then they'll still be doing good.
Well, and then also, like you said, just part of diversifying. Well, because like first off, as you said, the two things they're really known for is avant-garde, arty movies, and then horror. And I've always thought horror audiences are just weird, and so that's one of the reasons why they're so successful. Is because I think they're when they do make horror movies, I do think not only are they original, they are weird. Also,
Well, like as a horror fan, I can say that like I'm not speaking for all of us, but at
speak
least
for all of them.
Personally, and I was kind of talking about there was a bit of a renaissance, like horror in the 2000s was pretty boring. Like, I really liked the Saw franchise, but that was sort of like there was the early to mid in late 2000s, it was like torture porn was like the big thing, and then
God.
kind of near the end, supernatural like possession movies got really popular, but everything was feeling very samey and very like a lot of it was like high budget. Now you think of like The Conjuring, but it was like that sort of thing, but it just felt very samey. There wasn't like a lot of very unique, interesting ideas. And then around like 2012, 2013, there was what I called like a horror renaissance. There was a lot of really good indie movies coming out, like stuff like It Follows. There was that remake of Evil Dead that did really well. And
Oh, you heard they're doing a
Conjuring
sequel.
also,
They're doing a sequel to It Follows. Did you hear that?
I did not. But anyway, like and The Conjuring also came out, and that felt kind of like a breath of fresh air as far as like high budget horror movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know when A24's first films came out, but I think it was right around that time. So I'm just speaking for myself, but like A24's horror felt very refreshing compared to everything. You didn't really watch horror movies, but you've seen like the Saw and the Hostel trailers and stuff like that.
I've seen the
all
trailers.
being about very brutal and intense, and it was like, can we just have like a nice story? Like
Right.
we like scary monsters and we don't mind some gore and stuff, but can you like try?
Yeah.
And that's at least how I felt. So I feel like that is why their horror movies were successful, is they felt very unlike a lot of the stuff that was being pumped out. They felt very like intentionally artfully crafted, and that there was actual like thought put into them instead of just trying to be as shocking and scary as possible. Like there was actually like a story being told.
Right.
But so I think that still applies to them.
No, I agree. I do think horror is their strong suit, but I do think, like you said, eventually they are going to need to diversify, because even if their horror stuff is good, people will kind of tire of it, because people
They're starting
taste
to.
change. And they'll be like, oh, it's another A24 horror film, whether or not that's good or bad or whatever. They'll just be like, oh, that's another A24 horror film. That's another A24 arty film. They need to, and I think that's what they're trying to do. But I'm curious to see how well they do at it, because
They're dipping their toes into it. One movie I reviewed last year, The Northman, was kind of more of like an epic, it reminded me in my review of it, it was like kind of like a artsy version of Conan the Barbarian. And then a film that I will talk about on the finale was Beau is Afraid, and that's more of like a satire. And then Problemistas, if I end up seeing that looks more funny. So it seems like they're starting to kind of branch out. But we'll see what happens in the future.
most definitely, yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on them, see where they go.
All right, so enough about A24. Time for the main course. But before we
Yes.
get into that, what are you drinking, T?
Okay, so once again, I utilized my trusty Google search, and there is a cocktail that is actually called Mulholland Drive.
Nice.
So it has, oh my gosh, I have to look up what the recipe is again because I started looking up stuff that we were talking about. Here we go. So it has Camprini Mulholland Gin. I just use regular gin because I don't know what Mulholland Gin is. Amaro Montenegro, and a bar spoon of coffee liqueur. It's
Very
really
nice.
tasty. I love coffee liqueur, so I'm having a good time. And I feel
Coffee
I feel
liqueur's
very
good.
I feel very high end with this dish.
Coffee liqueur is delicious, but man, that stuff is dangerous. That Jack and Black cocktail, still have nightmares about it. You know, it's funny. I had a feeling there probably was a Mulholland Drive cocktail. I just wanted to go with like some wine. I did a cocktail last month, and I did the cider. It's November, just a nice, rich, deep red. And I was looking for something that would maybe like. The wine aisle gets pretty crazy, but I went with a Cabernet Sauvignon called Ruby V, and it's dumb, but like the name kind of sounded like a character I could imagine in a David Lynch film. Like Ruby V sounds like one of the waitresses at the Twin Peaks diner. So I was like, you know, very loose connection, but I think it's I think it works.
I'll take it.
And if I didn't do the wine, I actually as I said, I bet there was a Mulholland Drive cocktail. So if I had done that, we would have ended up drinking the same thing.
Well, from what I can tell, the cocktail is unrelated to the film. It's just called Mulholland Drive.
Aw, heck yeah. All right, so cheers.
Cheers, clink.
Clink, clink. All right, so I gave T a homework assignment for this. And I'll explain what that is. I'm just going to go through all of the obvious fun facts and everything. So Mulholland Drive was released in October 19th, 2001. Its budget was estimated at 15 million. Worldwide, it grossed 20 million. So not a huge, you know, this is an artsy-fartsy movie. It didn't make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And its opening weekend was under $1 million. It was $587,000. Written and directed by David Lynch. And it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Director. And it did not win. Although this was a crazy... I wonder if you realize this, T, but this is the same year one of your favorite all-time movies came out. This is the same year that Moulin Rouge was nominated for several awards. Yeah. So Mulholland Drive did not win any Academy Awards despite being nominated for Best Director, but it did win 49 awards out of 61 nominations for like various things. And Lynch lost the Best Director award to Ron Howard for A Beautiful Mind. So, you know,
I have thoughts about that.
Ooh, I'm curious to hear what they are. But like I said, this is a crazy year. It's the same year Peter Jackson's first Lord of the Rings movie came out. This was the year Ridley Scott did Black Hawk Down. You also had Nicole Kidman nominated for Best Actress, which that's a thing. Before doing any research, I was under the impression that Naomi Watts was up for Best Actress for this movie. Mm-hmm. She was robbed, especially looking at all of the nominations. Like Halle Berry won for Monsters Ball this year, and Nicole Kidman was up for Moulin Rouge.
She should have won for Moulin Rouge. She really should have.
There was like, we talk about this on the show all the time, where there's like big award movies that no one has heard of years after. You know, like Monsters Ball people still are aware of. Moulin Rouge is super popular. This movie's super popular. But there was like one of the movies that had multiple nominations was like called In the Bedroom, and maybe you've heard of it. I've never heard of that movie.
I don't have heard of that. Are you sure this was this was the Academy Awards, not the Adult Academy Awards?
No, there was a couple of movies that I'd never heard of that were up for a bunch of awards, but you know, big winners were things like Lord of the Rings, Beautiful Mind, Moulin Rouge won a few things. But it was a stacked year. Like I think Baz Luhrmann might have been nominated for Best Director as well.
I
Yeah,
guarantee you he was not, because he's never nominated for best
I
director.
do think he was nominated for Australia. I remember that year. I'm pretty sure he was.
Let me see, because I know he wasn't up for Moulin Rouge. He wasn't up for Elvis. For some reason
Lynch,
the Academy doesn't like him.
David Lynch is one of those directors where, first off, he doesn't really care if he wins anything, but at the same time, it's like, well, if he's gonna lose to somebody, at least it was A Beautiful Mind. You know, like it's a good movie. And also, this is kind of a weird movie. I'm not surprised the Academy might not be super into it. But let me know if I was right about Baz Luhrmann being nominated in, I think that was 2008, 2007. One of those.
So he has been nominated twice for Academy Awards, not as a director, as a producer.
Okay.
And it was for Best Picture for Elvis and Best Picture for Moulin Rouge.
There you go. All right. So, that is a lot of the initial fun facts. So, I'm going to let you get into your reading of the film. The homework assignment I gave T is kind of based on something I think I might have talked about in other reviews that we've done. But so he refuses to ever explain his movies to anybody.
Yeah.
And I love this, because one thing that gets me really annoyed is when people it's like, no, the movie is about this, and if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And like, so I love that he is kind of, you know, his philosophy is that your reading, you know, kind of you create a connection with the movie based on how you feel about it. And I wrote down a few quotes because I wanted to make sure I wasn't like misremembering something he said. But I got a couple of quotes about him talking about him explaining his movies and stuff from a Digital Spy article from 2018. And just a couple of quotes. He said, "I don't ever explain it because it's not a word thing. It would reduce it, make it small." And then he also said a film or TV show is like a magic act. So, you know, magician never reveals their secrets.
Okay. I kind of like that quote.
And here's another one. A film or a painting, each thing is its own sort of language, and it's not right to try and say the same thing in words.
Okay.
Right. And this was
there was an awkward silence there.
There was an awkward pause because I was having trouble reading my own chicken scratch.
Oh, okay. So was like, was I supposed to respond?
No. I was like, that was the awkward pause. I was curious what you thought when I was finished. But anyway, this is not from the same interview. This is a quote he has about the Mulholland Drive, the actual road. Because I guess he used to, I don't know if he still lives nearby, but he used to live off of Mulholland Drive. And based on how he feels about that street, he says, at night you ride on top of the world. In the daytime you ride on top of the world too, but it's mysterious and there's a hair of fear because it goes into remote areas. You feel the history of Hollywood on that road.
Oh, I like that. It's kind of like, it sounds like Mulholland Drive is like Chicago's Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah. No, and I've driven Mulholland Drive. I know what he means. It feels like one of the older streets in the city, and the view is unmatched. Like, there's a reason everybody drives it when they go to LA. And I got two more quotes. One is just kind of his feeling about... I'll just read it. You'll see what I mean. And this is also not from the same interview I was talking about. This was like a separate thing. But he says, I look at the world and I see absurdity all around me. People do strange things constantly to the point that for the most part, we manage not to see it. That's why I love coffee shops and public places. I mean, they're all out there.
Okay, I'm not sure. What kind of shots?
Coffee shops.
Oh, coffee shops. Okay, I was like,
he likes being in public places and coffee shops because there's all sorts of strange characters and whatever. And the last quote I have is not from David Lynch. It's from a David Lynch hater, and I'm going to see if you can guess what famous director does not like David Lynch.
Okay. Oh, you want me to guess now?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think I'm gonna read the quote first.
I'm gonna read the quote after if you can guess or not guess.
Okay, I'm just gonna guess because right now he's our favorite punching bag, Ridley Scott.
No, but he's. I will say this person is normally quite respectful to famous directors, so I was surprised to hear he doesn't like him, or at least he doesn't like him anymore.
Oh my
but
God.
he's someone you find incessantly irritating, and he's definitely one of your favorite punching bags.
Oh my God, is it Scorsese?
No,
Damn it.
I'll read the quote and then end with the name.
Okay.
David Lynch has disappeared so far up his own ass that I have no desire to see another David Lynch movie until I hear something different. Quentin Tarantino.
Oh my God. That sounds like something he would say, though. It just does.
Gotcha. So, going out of order from my notes, but just so that
I don't think he's up his own
ass.
I don't think he's up.
I don't think he's up his own ass either. I think Tarantino's up his a little bit with that.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know when he said that, but
I'm surprised he hasn't decorated.
Okay.
He's up there enough.
Okay, buddy. But yeah, so in the spirit of how Lynch likes for people to see his films, I have a couple of specific questions, but before I start leading into the conversation, I'll just let you have the floor, T. What did you think of this movie? What did you think it was trying to say to you?
Okay, so let me answer the second part of the question first. So my best guess of what the film is about, or at least what it was trying to say that I took from it, is about the what is it called, the corruption of the starlet sort of idea. That's kind of what
I got you.
That's kind of what I talk about, the whether or not you I think he's trying to say the inevitable corruption. I think reality wise that's no longer the case. But so that's what I would think he was trying to say, or at least what I think it's about. As far as what my take was, it was an interesting film, but it was, to me, it was very meh.
Okay.
And I don't mean to be mean about it.
Going back to, because I think you elaborating on your reading might be. So I wrote down a few questions specifically about certain things.
Okay.
And I think it might help you, articulate your feelings better on why you think it's about the corruption of a starlet. So I will say, here's one. So why do you think Diane changed the names of everybody in her dream?
She was having a dream?
Yeah.
Okay, this is new to me.
So this is kind of one of those things. I haven't seen this film in so long. I mentioned that I was going to review this film on the set that I was working on, and a bunch of people just started talking, and at one point one of them mentioned when it was all a dream, and I was like, la 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 la, I don't want to, because I hadn't seen the movie in a while.
Yeah.
But I, unfortunately, they said that. So at the very beginning of the movie, you see the jitterbug contest that she won, and then there's a bit of heavy breathing, and you see the camera kind of fading in and out of a pillow. And then, about 2/3 of the way through the movie, that dead body turns into Diane, and she's the one lying there. And, I have the benefit of, remembering that someone said it was all a dream, so I noticed it was the same bed sheets as the very beginning of the movie where you see the fade in and out.
See, that totally missed that. I completely missed that. However, now that you say that, it does make the last half hour does make more sense now.
So, exactly. So, I will say, just to clarify, the part where she wakes up is when she opens up the blue box, and then we cut back to the dead body on the bed, and it slowly turns into Diane, and she wakes up. And her name is now Diane instead of Betty. But so, now that I've revealed that revelation that it was the whole 2/3 of the movie was all a dream, Like, why do you think Diane changed the names of everyone in the dream? Why do you think she was Betty? Why do you think, oh goodness, why did I, please tell me I wrote all this down. Why do you think her girlfriend, was her girlfriend named Camilla? Why did I not write all this down? But yeah, why do you think all the names were changed?
So so I think the names were changed because it's much easier to process one's own feelings, especially now that I know it was a dream, if it's not actually you. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. Do you think there's any significance? Like, for instance, her name in the dream was Betty, who was the waitress at Winky's.
Mm-hmm.
Her girlfriend's name, I believe, was Camilla.
But it was
Camilla
Rita.
was the actress that there was that conspiracy for everyone to, like, you have to cast this woman Camilla Rhodes, and in the dream it was that random blonde girl, but in reality Camilla was her girlfriend. And then her own name, like, was a dead person. So do you think there was any significance to why she gave, because it wasn't just that she changed the names, it was that she had, all the names were of real people, but she gave them to different people.
So definitely I can see it with Betty, especially with Betty being the witch, because if you notice, not only did he change her name, he also kind of she changed her personality also. Her personality was very much of the waitress. So first off, I'm like, apparently she sees this waitress all the time. But second of all, I would say that as far as Betty goes, it was supposed to be more of an idealized version of herself, or how she wishes herself to be, or how she once was.
Yes.
That's what I see with that. Camilla, I don't know why her name was Rita. And
Well, I know she came up with Rita in the dream because she saw the movie poster in the bathroom, because in the dream she has amnesia and she's like, oh, I don't actually remember my name, and she sees Rita Hayworth, I think it was.
Well, I mean, that's why
she's like, oh, my name's Rita.
Okay,
exactly.
so maybe the symbolism of that is even in her dream, Camilla is still the star of her life. You know.
Gotcha.
I guess that would be what the significance of those names, at least.
So what do you think the blue box and the blue key represent? Because in the dream, they go to the club Silencio, and the box ends up in her purse. And
yeah, where did the box come from?
Exactly.
I was going back. Like, did somebody drop it in her purse? Like, where did this thing come from?
Yeah, so somehow the box is like what wakes her up. And in reality, so it seems like she hires a hit on her girlfriend because she feels like vexed, and she, she's with this other man who's a director, and blah, I want her dead. And then the hitman gives her a blue key, which, is for the same box. So what do you think symbolically the blue box and the blue key represents, and what do you think was in reality? Like, what do you think that blue key would have opened if she had, pursued that further?
So, in reality, my guess would be the blue box would open some sort of, usually for people to get paid, there has to be some sort of proof of death. Maybe some sort of proof, like maybe he would stash her scarf or something that she would have had she wouldn't have given up, something would be stashed in that locker. That's what I would assume in reality. In the dream, it's almost like this will unlock the secrets of the universe.
Maybe.
I don't. But the box. What the box reminded me of? The box reminded me of. Oh, it wasn't Evil Dead. It was that other one that we watched. Now I can't think of what it's called.
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, thank you. Especially that, and then there's a homeless person with the box. I mean, can you please not tell me in Mulholland Drive that was totally a reference to that? Because the homeless guy was playing with the box also.
So, since you've mentioned him, he was also a question. What do you think... how did I write it down? What do you think the man in the back of the restaurant represents? I think I think that, so first off, I don't know if this got you. That is considered by a lot of people one of the best jump scares in cinematic history. The first time I saw this movie, it scared the living shit out of me because I was not expecting to be like jumped at. And a lot of times later in the movie, there's a lot of POV tracking shots where I was like tensing up because I was expecting something else to jump out at me. But a lot of people like will reference that scene. You know, the Winkies. I have this dream of this man. He's the one doing it in the back of this. Like that whole scene. Everybody. I'm not making this up. Like a lot of people talk about that as like a good jump scare scene, and apparently it gets a lot of people. Because I saw this, as I said, when I was like 17, 18, and scared the crap out of me. Wondering if it got you, and wondering what you think of that scene. And as far as like reading the film, what do you think the man in the back of the restaurant represents?
Okay, so first off, I hate to break to you, I'm not making I was genuinely not startled by that scene.
No worries.
I was just like, and now I feel bad because you're like the horror master and you were startled.
No, well, like, that's the thing. It's one of those things where in retrospect, you kind of wonder why it scared you so much, at least to me, because he looks kind of goofy and stuff. And I also felt kind of dumb for getting, again, later on, I saw this in high school, and, you know, it's one of those classic David Lynch films. A lot of people consider this his best movie. So, you know, it's on the internet. People talk about it a lot. And I found out later on that a lot of people got jumped by that scene. So I don't take any offense. A lot of people were, you know, as I said, people like the scene. So
the only thing,
if it got you.
The only thing I can think of is I remember I was expecting something to happen, but it's almost like I was expecting something much worse to happen. So when it was just some guy stepping out from behind like the dumpster or whatever it is, that wall, I was just like, oh. I don't know. Maybe that's what I was like, okay, now somebody's gonna come out with a gun and kill them, or the guy he's seeing, or the guy he's hanging out with is gonna, you know, like kill him and dump him or something. Because I didn't know what was going on.
So leading up to it, you were pretty on edge, and then when the guy came out from behind the wall, it just deflated everything.
Yeah, I guess that would be the way to put it.
That's fair.
I don't know if it was on edge. I was definitely expecting. I'm expecting something because these people are acting weird. Of course, this is more towards the beginning of the movie. Everybody acts weird in this movie. So I was like, this thing's bizarre. I didn't know who the other guy was, what his relationship was. I'm like, is he meeting his like therapist in public? But that's not normal. What's he doing? And then the guy's like, okay, let's go. Let's walk back there. And then, so I guess I was expecting like a double cross or for him to get jumped or something. And then it was just somebody like walking out behind a wall. I was just kind of like, oh. So that's what, because I remember specifically thinking something is going to happen with this guy back here. He's going to rob him or kill him or something. And then, I mean, I guess it's implied, at least in the dream, he dies. I'm assuming from a heart attack, because apparently everybody else got one.
Which also, that scene kind of hints that it's all a dream, because he says, I've, you know, dreamt of this person. I hope I'll never see that face outside of a dream. But then it shows up. So it almost is kind of a hint to you that maybe you're in a dream.
You know, let me see. I'm trying to think of now, what does the homeless person symbolize? This one's a thing.
Well, that's what. Yeah, exactly. That was another question, because he's also the one with the blue box at the end. So. And that, I think, is an important line too in that scene. Is he is the one doing all of this.
That is, see, now is when you pair that line with the fact that they had this box, and the box is what triggers her to wake back up and everything like that. The only thing I think of is perhaps it's supposed to mean, because if you really think about it, in LA, homeless people are the unseen people. They're there, but we kind of just tune them out. Like, do you know what I mean? They're
I
the
just think it's funny you keep calling him like you're not entirely off base because later in the film he's got the fire and the shopping cart behind him. But to me, like when I first saw this film and even now, it's like
I thought he was a burn victim at first or something.
he looks like a creature is the thing. Like I think it's funny you keep calling him a homeless person because it's not entirely off base. But it's just funny because he's so not human looking. Like I wouldn't even like. He also, when I was a kid, he kind of reminded me of like a witch or something.
Yeah, I could see that. I could
yeah.
see that. I could definitely see that. I guess. Okay, so this is just my theory, off the top of my head, because I'm coming up with this on the fly. Because I didn't know that there was going to be a test. I'm sorry, I didn't study. But you told me not to
it's
study.
not a test. These are just questions because I figured, like, especially since it's kind of a strange movie,
Yeah,
it might kind of help your thought process if you have specific parts of the movie you're talking about to, like, you know, what does this represent and what does that represent. So not a test. As I said, you know, in the spirit of David Lynch, all answers are correct answers.
Oh, that's
the
good.
film
Okay.
generates emotion. You know, it makes you feel a certain way. You know, I'll get into it a little later with David Lynch's background, but he is a painter before he is a filmmaker. So,
and that is incredibly obvious in any of his films you ever watch. That is incredibly obvious. That he was. It's kind of like when you watch Roma, and I was like, it's so obvious this guy's a cinematographer first and a director second.
Well, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying during our Patterson. Like, I find directors who didn't go to film school really interesting because they don't think the same way. You know, like people who went to like film school to make like Hollywood productions think. They do, you know, like in that film, Jim Jarmusch, like, you know, he understands how to make a film, but he's not thinking about it the same way. He's much more interested, like in that film, we talked about the dialogue and the poetry and kind of the way the scenes played out with like conversations and stuff. And with David Lynch being a visual artist, like he definitely has certain like striking imagery in his movies, but just like a lot of other filmmakers that did not go to film school starting out, I just think that makes his way of telling a story really interesting because he's not, first off, he's not interested in turning a profit. He's more interested in like, you know, kind of doing his own thing. But because of that, there's nothing like a David Lynch movie. Like whether you like him or not, there is no way, like you can attempt to copy his style, but sometimes he thinks so outside of the box that you can't even conceive of how he came up with that idea, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Like, I feel like a misconception with him is, like, a lot of people think he's just being weird for the sake of being weird or that, you know, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I feel like this film is kind of a great example of him exactly knowing what he's doing because when scenes are odd, like, that's on purpose. One of the best scenes in the film is Betty's audition because the scene that she's reading is like a very normal like Hollywood script.
Yeah.
And she, like, as I said, I think Naomi Watts was robbed of an Oscar nomination in this movie because she's basically playing three characters. She's playing Betty, she's playing Diane, and then she's playing that character from that audition because her body language and everything changes in that scene. But that scene feels like something in a more like mainstream Hollywood movie. And okay. I forgot if you said you've watched Twin Peaks, but I feel like that's another example of like he knows what he's doing. If he wants to make like a normal TV show, like he can do it. He just doesn't care. Like if the characters are acting weird, it is on purpose and there is like a reason for it. It's just, you know, figuring out what that reason is.
Well, I will say, now that I know that this was a dream, I have no idea what the movie was about.
It makes you, well, and maybe through the scenes will make you think about it. And that's a question. Now that you know that it's a dream, do you think you would rewatch this like with that in mind and maybe get more out of it the second time?
No, but I'll get to why later.
Okay.
But going back to the homeless person, because our listeners will be like, what did he think? So, okay, so as you know from living in LA, there are homeless people everywhere. And they're kind of like the great unseen people. We kind of all just pretend they're not there. That's why there's such a huge crisis, is because we kind of just have subconsciously tuned them all out. That sounds awful, but it's what we do. And so by him controlling the box, which is in turn, I guess, controls the dream, um, perhaps maybe he's supposed to symbolize the fact that um, we we will never see or truly know who is pulling the strings in show business. I guess I don't know. I made that up, but there you go.
Got you. All right. What do you think is the significance and meaning of the Silencio Club? That was another scene I thought had a lot of very interesting lines, but also I think that might be trying to make a point in the movie. No hay banda, there is no band. It is all a recording.
I know. So, okay. The only thing I could come up with that scene is this was the early 2000s, back when lip syncing was a big deal and a huge scandal. I'm like, is he trying to make some point about lip syncing? Because that exists.
Could be that it could be that it's a dream.
The other thing that I was thinking about is, and I had such a clear thought about this earlier. Now it's like coming to me. The fact that the what is it called? The whoever the singing woman is, she like collapses and quote unquote dies, but she keeps singing, because of it's a recording. Was the fact that we see that visual, maybe it's supposed to imply how essentially artists, they leave a piece of themselves behind when they leave the earth. I don't know. That's what I thought about that. But also it could also be a point of the fact that, like you said, he talks about how he doesn't like to explain his movies, is maybe the fact that once something's made, you no longer have a say in how it's interpreted. I have no idea. But
I definitely think that might have something to do, because there's that whole side plot. I would have written a question down about the whole thing with the director getting his movie hijacked, but I think that's pretty on the nose. And I think that's like the one part of the movie that's very like autobiographical, because I think I've told you about this. So David Lynch did a Dune movie in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And he cites it as one of the most, it's a nightmare. He hated it. It was a living hell for him. And part of it was because he had no say in anything that was going on. The movie just had tons of problems. Like, after that movie, he never, ever, ever wanted to do like a major Hollywood movie again. Just because he had such a terrible experience of it. So at least as far as that stuff with the director, at least my viewing of that is that's just David Lynch like airing out his trauma with that.
Well, he made the director incredibly unlikable. I don't know why he did that. It was supposed to be autobiographical. Yeah. Well, so was David Lynch's wife also having an affair at the same time or something?
He'd been married a few times. I'm not sure if
maybe he was having the affair.
Who knows? Maybe. Although, I don't know. Everyone always says he's like one of the best guys to work with. As I've told you, Laura Dern and him are like BFFs, and everyone who's worked with him says he's like one of their favorite directors they've ever worked with. So I don't know. And that too, he's, as far as I know, he was never in the tabloids. So maybe he did, but it's hard to know because he never really was one of those crazy party boy directors going around dating all the actresses they were working with and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But so that was Silencio. So separate from the director, but kind of connected to that, why do you think she was like? What do you think the significance of the whole conspiracy to cast Camilla Rhodes was? Like that. Why do you?
Well, I feel like okay, now that I know a lot more, and like I said, it's autobiographical, this is now starting to feel like his obligatory I'm a director and I made a film about Hollywood movie. So in the dream, I interpreted that as the way things get done in Hollywood. Like you said, it's not really about the artistry or about any of this other stuff. It's about who needs what made, who wants somebody in something. And so that's, and because it's like, I never know what their deal was. with this. I wish they like. I'll get, and again, I'll touch on this probably again when I talk about the thing that we discussed earlier. But I really don't know what the deal with having her with having her cast in that, especially in the dream when it's not her love interest. So, I have no idea what that was about, unless she was jealous about her being cast and stuff, because she does show up at that audition.
Gotcha.
And she catches the director's eye, and so maybe she wished that she was the one that caught his eye instead of her, instead of Camilla.
It's a good. That's yeah. I think that's a neat interpretation of it.
Well, especially later when they talk about how she wasn't that good, but Camilla keeps her around, basically.
There you go. And that's pretty much all of the questions. So I'll get to my reading of it in just a sec, but you said even knowing that it's a dream and like that might recontextualize kind of everything about it, you said you still probably wouldn't want to rewatch it or like relook at it. Like, so what do you think as far as that goes? Like, did you? I guess we're not getting into the ratings yet, but it sounds like you kind of were not into this one.
Yeah, and so this was my issue, and it was weird because I didn't really have this issue with Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet, I don't want to watch again because it was kind of disturbing.
Yeah,
but it was still interesting and different and kind of good. My problem with this one is I could tell from the beginning I was supposed to be in suspense a lot, or it almost kind of felt like it was supposed to be like a thriller kind of. But nothing...
Which is funny because that's why I thought you would like this one better. It has a lot of the things that you tend to like. It's got a decent romance, not super deep, but it is very melodramatic.
Remind me to touch
suspense,
on that too.
It's got a mystery. Like a lot of things about this one I felt like would appeal more to you.
So when I was watching, I was like, "Oh, I can see why he thinks I would like this." So my problem isn't necessarily because it's a bad or horrible movie, or I don't think it was interesting or anything. My problem, I think, my biggest issue with it is because he's trying. I feel like David Lynch was trying very, very hard to keep us in suspense a lot about what's going on. That there weren't enough breadcrumbs for me to latch onto. For me to be like, okay, and what next now? Like, I feel like I was kept in the dark like most of the movie, and it's kind of like when it was almost like you were sitting by somebody and they were having a conversation. You were invited into the conversation, but you have nothing. You have no idea what they're talking about, and you're just like, why am I here? I kind of felt like there weren't enough breadcrumbs to really make, and I don't mean like reveal things, but it was just like,
I get what you mean.
It just there wasn't enough there to really grab on, and I know this is just a stylistic thing with him. I know that I know this about him, but like there were just so many subplots that were picked up and then dropped immediately, and then it was like almost I could tell at the end it was supposed to all tie together at the end, but because I still, for the most part, had no idea what was going on. I was like, okay, apparently this is payoff, but I don't know what the payoff is. Like when we see, I guess the only thing I think of is the fact that these were people that she saw in her real life, and she was adding them to the dream sequence or whatever. But I don't know. To me, that was kind of just unsatisfying. I will say. I wish the fact that it had been a dream had been a little bit more clear. Now, this is probably just a me watching thing, because I feel like I would have approached it from a completely different angle. And now you'll probably be like, "Well, watch it."
Well,
again.
I'm curious if my interpretation will make you want to take a look at it. Because one thing, it has been such a long time since I saw this movie that I'm very happy that I was pretty much blank slate going into this. Like, I remembered the general plot and some of the weirder aspects of it, but I couldn't tell you what it was about because I didn't remember, I remembered big scenes like Silencio and stuff, but I didn't remember exactly how it ended and stuff. So this is what buckle up, I'm going to have to kind of explain my thought process and stuff unpacking this. So there's like a couple of things going on. There's what the movie's about and there's the story. So And the other thing I wouldn't have been surprised with you not liking this is a lot of people, the whole, oh, it was all a dream is like a cop-out thing. The reason I feel like that doesn't apply to this is that it recontextualizes everything you saw in the first 2 hours rather than just throwing it out the window. Like, all of the characters exist, but they have a different, like, she knows them differently in her real life and stuff. So as far as what I think happened in the movie, I think that Diane, she said she won a jitterbug contest that inspired her to move out to Hollywood. And I think that she was very idealistic. As she said, she met Camilla on the set of a movie that she did not get cast in. But just because of her friendship with her, she was able to get like bit roles and stuff, and they started dating. And I think that she felt like almost like a parasite in the and that too. It seemed like they were secretly dating. So like Camilla was in a relationship with the director. It seemed like she was kind of a polyamorous sort of person. So as Diane was living in Hollywood, she's living in kind of a ratty apartment. She's barely making any money working, and her girlfriend is also keeping her a secret while dating these wealthier people and also moving up in the world. Like, she's getting better and better roles. And that scene where she's just kind of tagging along on the set, I feel like was very emotionally expressive about the dynamic of their relationship, because she's just in the corner watching, oh, can Diane stay? Yeah, Diane can stay, whatever, so she's kind of feels pushed to the side. So then I believe that that party that she went to on Mulholland Drive was like the end point where she was like, I can't take this anymore. She hired that guy to, kill her girlfriend. And, he said, like, I'll give you this key or whatever, like, when it's done. Or I forgot if he gave it to her after he said it was done. She has a key. That's all that happened in the real world. In the dream, in my opinion, I think in the context of Diane, is like I agree with what you said about, I think that the dream version of her was an idealized version of her. The other thing I think is interesting is in the real world, Camilla has more agency in everything, even in Diane's life. But in the dream, Camilla is like a scared puppy. She has amnesia. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't even know her name. She doesn't know why anyone was trying to kill her, or that she was, all she knows is that she was in an accident. There's like creepy dudes in suits looking for her. And I feel like that was like giving Diane a feeling of importance and being in control of the relationship. And she gets to be the hero, kind of solving this mystery. What I think of the homeless guy, because I think that's funny that we keep calling him that.
The homeless guy.
So I think it's very, very telling that she is dead in her own dream, or at least, there's a character with her name Dead, and that the idealized version of her is kind of the hero of the story. I think, especially with that line about he's the one doing everything, I think that guy is like a manifestation of her envy and her jealousy, and he is like the monster in her subconscious that wanted to kill her girlfriend. And I think that might even be why he has the box, because, the one who, after the hit's done, like, you get the box or whatever. So that's what I interpret for him. As far as the director stuff, I feel like, as I said, mostly I feel like that was just David Lynch venting about his bad experience in Hollywood. But in the context of the movie and the dream, I think that it's more convenient for her to come up with this crazy conspiracy scheme. Like, oh, this is why, people who... Because in the dream, she's also, super talented. Everyone's like, oh my God, you're an amazing actress. But at the very end, it's like, it doesn't matter how good she is, Camilla's still going to get cast.
Interesting.
So with all of that in mind, I think I think you're also kind of hitting the nail on the head as far as like sort of the theme or what the movie is about. I don't think it's like necessarily saying like everyone is going to be corrupted by Hollywood, but I think it's about the corrupting force of Hollywood and how this woman has felt kind of she's changed as from the innocent like Midwest girl that she was, and the dream is kind of a manifestation of her guilt for what she did. And that was a question, like, I'm not even sure exactly. I'm guessing. So one of my questions I forgot to ask was, what do those like old people represent at the end? So I didn't get to ask it, but for me, I think those are her parents. And I think that ending scene is pretty terrifying with them, like, the scream and everything. But I think she commits sewer slide, as we call it, because of the guilt of the fact that she just put a hit out on the girl she was in love with. So that's my reading. I'm wondering what your thoughts on all of that are.
So I made some notes. Let me see if I can read them. So you talked about how you think that that it's not a cop out because it recontextualizes everything, all the people and everything she sees. So my only issue with that is I still don't know what the context of these people are in the real world. She sees them, great, but why were they significant enough to show up in her dream? Like, I guess that's my thing. And that being said, why is the random guy at the coffee shop that has that whole discussion about, like you were talking about with her and it's him, he's the one that's doing everything. Why is he the only one that gets to meet, in a way, the homeless guy or her envy? Like what made him, I guess, important enough to meet the personification of her envy? So I guess that's my issue with that. Is it's like, you're right, it does it like, okay, it's a dream, they're people from it, but what's their context in the real world that made them important enough to be characters in her dream?
It's a good question, right? Because I feel like, obviously, for the sake of the movie, that scene exists to kind of set up that monster homeless guy antagonist sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it makes you wonder, right? Because like, obviously that person is not real if this is a dream, so it's kind of like she must be dreaming that scene. Yeah. But then it's like, why is she dreaming a scene, learning about this person? It makes me wonder, again, like this, and this is the fun of David Lynch. Like, this is where this podcast could turn into a 3-hour podcast, because we don't know, and he refuses to explain his movies. But it would almost, to me, kind of be like, maybe she is making herself, like, obviously she feels guilt, so I don't know. It's like she's making herself aware that there's like an evil presence in her dream. If that makes any sense.
And then my other thing is also, it's like, why did she keep her relationship with Betty, not Betty, with Diane a secret? Because she's at the party, she openly makes out with this other woman. So clearly it wasn't a keep your sexuality hidden thing.
No, I'm guessing it was for her career or something. I don't know. Like, maybe the director was aware that they were he must have been somewhat in a. I think she was just kind of jealous of Camilla in general. I think that's why Camilla was sort of the villain in her dream, not the same Camilla. Like, yeah, as you said, I think everyone.
Go ahead.
Camilla is the brunette who has in the real world. That's Camilla. In the dream, she's Rita. In the real world, she's Camilla. And that's where I think you're right about it being idealized versions of characters in the real world, because in the dream, Rita, her love, she's dependent on her. She's a lot more scared. She's less outgoing. She's hiding from people. And as I said, like, Diane as Betty in the dream is like the hero. And I think that the significance of that is that Camilla is the villain in her real life. Like, I don't know what that woman's name is that makes out with Camilla at the party, but that, I think, is why there's that conspiracy in her dream, and she makes her the villain that's just going to get cast in the movie no matter what she does, is because of the jealousy from that bit at the party where she makes out with Camilla. And I think that's why she's put because really in the real world, I would say Camilla's just kind of a crappy person. Like, she doesn't really care about the relationship. Like, the nicest thing she's done is given her, some bit parts, or, put in a good word for her. But she definitely doesn't value her as a girlfriend, and she sleeps around, and she's kind of a social climber. So I feel like she's separated those negative traits from Camilla, and again, like, Rita is what she wants in a love interest, right? Like, Rita, and it's not necessarily, it's kind of toxic when you think about it, because like Rita in the dream is so dependent on her, but I think that's as messed up as it is. I think that's what she wants, and then she takes all of those negative traits and projects them onto this random woman at the party, and has given her Camilla's name, which is interesting because I mean, in the real world, she's put out a hit on Camilla. So it's like, in the real world, Camilla's sort of her lover and the villain, right? Because she gives her so much pain and so much pleasure at the same time. And I think that's why she's almost like separated those two aspects of her into two different characters in her dream.
So, okay. So with that being said, hang on. What else was I going to say about this?
It's a lot, right? I told you I had a lot of thoughts.
What is... Okay, so why does... Well, here, let me put this back to you. Okay, so then if that's... What does the espresso symbolize?
I think that was just a funny scene. That's the thing also about David Lynch I don't think people realize is even as far back as Eraserhead, there are scenes that are just meant to be funny. It's like same thing with that hitman guy when he's like killing those people in the apartment, and it just keeps more people keep getting alerted. Right. The bullet goes through the wall. Like, that's the thing, and you see this in Twin Peaks a lot. Like, again, in his TV show that actually like got millions and millions of viewers, like, you see this in that TV show, but even in his weird movies, like, he does have a sense of humor. Like, even in I'm trying to think, in Blue Velvet there's definitely some funny scenes, but like, you haven't seen Eraserhead. There's like a dinner scene in that movie that is like equal parts creepy and funny. Well, so I don't think the espresso symbolizes anything. Besides the fact that those two like producers or mobsters or whoever they are supposed to be very threatening. Mm-hmm. Like, I just think that was like meant to be funny. Like, the guy would not only not like the espresso, but just spit it into a napkin.
Oh my god! And like, it that was like studio didn't even have mouth. That studio didn't even have quality napkins. Those napkins were made out of, I think, 100% polyester, because if you notice, it didn't soak into the napkin. It kind of ran down the napkin, and that's a sign of a low-quality napkin.
There you go.
Sorry.
But yeah,
I set tables for fun, so I know this thing. But what I was going to say about the fun, now that you brought up the funny scenes, and I will say that was another thing. That was, by itself, I could tell this. I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be a comedy scene, but because the rest of the film was supposed to be so tense and everything, I was like, I don't know. It was kind of like a weird tonal shift that I was like, okay, so now what's going on? And then,
yeah, I mean,
why,
again,
and then
like,
why did he need the black book anyway?
Yeah, that's a thing. Some of the plot lines that are dropped, I would say, are kind of like, because it's a dream, it's sort of like she didn't end up finishing those aspects of it in her head. Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder, like, if there were like cutscenes or something, but it's what it is. You kind of have to judge it on that. And I don't think the movie is like perfect necessarily, but I will say, think like if.
I will say that I can agree with the people who say that who can say that the dream part is a little bit of a cop out, especially when you take into consideration, like you said, the dropped plot lines. It's almost because like it's almost like a reset for the person 2/3 of the way through the movie.
For me, the reason it works is because when it's all reset, you're kind of like, well, wait a second, what's going on? You know what I like, and then you're kind of. It gets confusing, right? Because also the fact that everyone has the same name, but it's on different characters, Mm-hmm. So then you get confused with that. like really at the end of it, like you're kind of trying to figure out what the dream meant. Like that's the point of the movie, is like figuring out why she had this dream. And whether, I interpreted it as she committed suicide at the end of the film. That could be, someone might interpret that as, not actually being the case, and like, oh, this is symbolic of something. As I said, this is like kind of the fun of David Lynch movies, is you and I are going to have this reading, and our listeners, if you've seen the film, you're probably going to be screaming at your phone or computer or
like, it's
whatever.
so obvious. This is what it was.
You're so stupid. Why do I even listen to this podcast? Like, that's the fun, and that's why I like David Lynch movies, and that's why I like talking about David Lynch movies with other people, is everyone's going to have a different take based on their lived experience, based on things they noticed in the film that I wouldn't have noticed. And that's the thing. And with the funny scenes, like, as I said, David Lynch is not like a pretentious douche or any, like, he does understand the importance of entertainment value. So even if there's like weird tonal shifts with the humor, and that too, maybe someone is like, oh, actually the espresso represents this. I don't know. Like, all I know is he does have funny scenes and things sometimes.
I just had a take on the espresso.
Do it.
Okay, so
you want to espresso it?
I'm gonna espresso my opinion on this. So she obviously, because this is her dream, although I personally have never had a dream where I'm third person omniscient.
Right.
But she obviously...
Well, you've also never murdered a partner that I know of.
That you know of. Watch out.
You got a blue box in your room?
No, I don't have a blue box in my room, unfortunately.
No high banda, T. It's just a recording.
It's just a recording.
That should have been an intro. No.
This is just a recording.
This is just a recording.
What was I gonna say? Oh, so the espresso. I just had a thought about this, because she obviously in her dream thinks a lot about herself. She is a fabulous actress. Nails the audition. The first person, I think she was a little rapey in her audition, but that's just me. I'm like, girl, chill. You don't have to consent. That was weird. Anyway, but she's like, she's this great actress. She works really well with everybody. So the producers, the Weird Moth people, come in and they want this person. It's only this person. They are offered literally the best the world can offer, this espresso, and it's still not good enough for them.
Yeah, that could be symbolic. That could be like, yeah. Well, and also speaking of that, I was
kind of expecting some applause, but okay, I'll go with that.
No, but and you touched on something I didn't even think about with that audition with her rapiness, but like, so that's an interesting thing too. It's easy to forget what Diane is like in real life, because so much of the movie is the dream, right? So yeah. In reality, she's not very, like, she's very sexual with Camilla, right? But she's really not. Like, that's the thing. Camilla's like sleeping with the director. She's making out with random girls at parties. Yeah. But Diane is not that person. So I feel like in the scene, I was kind of interpreting that whole thing as like, oh, this guy thinks he's gonna, I'm just a starry-eyed actress from the Midwest, and you're just gonna get to mac on me and blah, blah, blah. But no, I'm taking control of the scene. And I still think that, but now I actually think that that's also kind of part of the fantasy of the dream, is that in her real life, she's very timid and mousy, and like even in her own relationship, she sort of takes a back seat. But in this dream, it's like, no, not only am I a kick-ass actress, I'm gonna make this middle-aged man my bitch. Yeah. I am going to have all of the charisma in this scene, and everyone's gonna. So that's kind of. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't even think about that until you said that.
Well, because I was just like, you're being a little aggressive here, girl. This is just like with you at first, like what you said at first, I thought it was going the other direction, where he was going to try to take advantage of her or the situation, and then it's the opposite. I'm like, girl, stop.
That's yeah.
Well, and then also, the context... if you also think about it, also that whole scene also kind of puts into context how she views other women, because all the men were overwhelmingly positive and happy with her. It was when she leaves with the women, they're all like catty and talking about, oh, how bad the film is. And it was almost like it was supposed to be a discussion on how she views other women.
Well, and that's kind of the interest. That's just a great scene, because that's the other thing, is those are the only other women in the room. And as soon as they leave, all the men are left and they're like cheering, and all the women are like, this movie's never even gonna get made.
Yeah.
Oh, that poor sap, you know. So yeah, man, this movie, you could just keep going and go, because we haven't even talked about all the scenes with the director finding his wife cheating on him and stuff. Like,
was that Billy Ray Cyrus? Because it sounded like him.
It was. Did you notice his name in the credits?
I did notice the name in the credits, but that sounds like Billy Ray Cyrus. So
there you go, man. This movie has 1 degree of separation to Hannah Montana.
Right. Okay, I do want to touch on...
Just because the runtime of this episode is going on, I'm going to move on a little bit. Unless, was there anything else analysis-wise you wanted to touch on?
Let me see. Analysis-wise, probably not. I did have a small complaint, though.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this is just me, and maybe this was just the time period. When they were having their love scenes, I feel like there were way too many just random up-close shots of their breasts. And I was like...
I was thinking about that, but then when I was like replaying it in my mind, their faces were normally in frame. I'd have to go back and creepily watch all of the sex scenes to make sure. But
for
that
some
was
reason, I'm just remembering freshly. There was like lots of up close shots of the breasts, and then it was almost like they would justify it almost by having one of them play with the other's nipples. And I'm just like, who is this scene for? I mean, not this. The that's the scene. Who is this shot for?
As I said, like, fresh out of the movie, like right after I watched it, I was kind of thinking, because this movie is very, very sensual, but it's like, it didn't feel male gazy, and I was trying to think of why it didn't. And again, this is my opinion. Someone might say it's very male gazy, because there's a lot of boobs, not too much anything else, but a lot of boobs. But again, I'd have to rewatch all of the scenes, but I remember usually it was like like their face was also in frame. There were a couple of shots where it would like pan down or, you know, like kind of like go down to their lower parts, but it was usually like intercut with other shots. So again, I'd have to be like a weirdo and rewatch all of the sex scenes. But again, like,
it's research. You're doing it for research. It's
research, Mom. Leave me alone. No,
well,
but,
you know what's interesting is the first time in the dream world when they make love, I was just like, oh, that came out of nowhere. I don't know. To me, I didn't get a romantic vibe from between the two of them until that scene.
Well, it feels forced, right? It feels super unnatural. And again, like, this is kind of where I feel like the whole dream thing recontextualizes it, because it is forced, because it's her dream. You know, the idea of this girl with amnesia somehow randomly being a lesbian and also being like, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, this came... I remember when I saw this as a teenager being like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. I didn't realize it was that kind of movie. But yeah, it does, because it's her dream. And as I said, at least the way I interpret it, it's like she's in control of the relationship, which she isn't in the real world. She's just kind of her side chick. See, so that's the way it kind of feels to me anyway. And why, again, the dream thing works for me because... And that too, like, for a lot of the movie, I'm sure you felt this way, where it's like, wow, people are weird. They're not talking normally. Like, this all feels very strange. And then...
Right, like, even at the very beginning, it's like the two cops are sitting there like, oh, yeah, it was a crash. Yes, it was.
But the interesting thing is...
I showed you what I found already.
Yeah, right? But that's the interesting thing. And maybe you'll reconsider rewatching this, but that's kind of the interesting thing, is once the dream has been... you know, once she wakes up, everything for that last third feels a lot less strange. Like, you know, the dialogue feels more naturalistic. People don't act super weird or talk in a weird... Like, even Diane, like, the way she talks when she's Betty in the dream, she sounds like frickin' like a 1930s Hollywood actress. Like, the way she's talking and delivering her lines and stuff feels really weird and, like... Golden Hollywood-y, and
Yeah.
then when she's Diane, when she wakes up, she's talking, yeah, I'll get to it later, like she's not that person anymore. And I feel like, as I said, like when David Lynch does weird stuff, it is intentional. You might not know why he's doing it, but it is intentional.
What's interesting is, because I told you my original analysis of this, it was about the inevitable corruption of the starlet. The reason I said that is because I had no idea what happened and why until you explained to me it was a dream, that the last third was happening. Because like, okay, but these are the people they're investigating. Did they figure it out? Like, what's going on? And then I thought it was just playing like the starlet's Diane's like last days or whatever, and it was going to end with somehow Camilla getting in the car accident and then ending up back there. So that's why, for some reason, I was like, okay, is this in the past, future? What is this? So I thought the reason why they had the same actors and actresses playing this was to make that point about the inevitable corruption of the starlet, because it's almost like this is where Betty's future is headed. It's in this direction, which is kind of also why I was until you explained to me that it was a dream, I was a little upset with David Fincher for making
David
the lesbian. I'm sorry. I did this earlier when I was looking him up. I'm like, wait, no, he didn't do Zodiac. I'm sorry, David Lynch. I was a little upset with David Lynch earlier when I was watching this, because at first I thought he was implying, because this was the early 2000s, that the lesbianism was part of the corruption, kind of like, the scruples of Babylon, all that fun stuff. So now I know that wasn't the case. I'm happier with that. But that's the reason why I went in that direction, is I thought it was an interesting artistic choice to have for the two of them. They found out what happened to Diane and quote unquote Rita, and this is what happened to them. And so the reason the same actresses were playing these characters was to make a point about Betty's future. So that's I'm kind of like a little let down by the fact that it was just a dream.
Part of me, I'm beginning. So for anyone who's new to the show or something, like, so there's been two instances in the course of the history of the show where T has had a very different opinion of the movie when we're talking about it, and then later. The first time was Memento, and then the second time was Poltergeist. I'm wondering if, like, you said you don't want to rewatch this knowing that it's a dream. I part of me is wondering, maybe you won't like the movie better,
but
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, a few weeks from now you're like, I rewatched it, and man, knowing it's a dream, completely, I have a whole new outlook on this movie. I still think it's bad, but, like, I don't know, like, it's...
Listen, I know, to be fair, I never said it was bad. Implying it's just not for me.
You're not. No, you haven't said it's bad.
But I
guess
get what you're saying.
So,
I still feel bad about that Poltergeist review.
In case anyone listened to that review and then skipped over to this one, T liked it. It's a classic. T probably, you've watched it over 10 times at this point. So
I mean, it's just fun to have on in the background. It's like and it takes The Haunting seriously. You know how rare that is in movies.
But so before I forget, I'll go through, because I wanted to save it for later. David Lynch's like background. I kind of wanted to, have the quotes kind of set the stage for the analysis. We already got the info about the movie, but so David Lynch, really old, born January 20th, 1946 in Missoula, Montana. He has never won an Academy Award outside of an honorary Academy Award in 2019. The Guardian says that he, in their opinion, he is the most important filmmaker of the current era. He originally got his undergraduate degree at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts for painting, and then later, and I found this interesting. At least on Wikipedia, they never said that he went to AFI, but he did. Yeah. I don't know if he graduated, but that's a whole thing. He got into AFI because of his short film Alphabet. And while he was at AFI, he made Eraserhead. It took him 7 years, so he was at AFI for 4 years, and then he was like secretly filming on their campus for 3 years afterwards. He's been nominated for Best Director 3 times, but has never won. He was nominated for The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, and this film. And he's a big fan of transcendental meditation. He actually has the David Lynch Foundation, which seeks to teach transcendental meditation in schools to the homeless, veterans, refugees. And this is a big reason why he's BFFs with Laura Dern, who's also really into transcendental meditation.
I like that.
So he has favorite filmmakers, but he says he's kind of more into like European filmmakers. So some of his favorite directors are Federico Fellini, Jean-Luc Godard, Ingmar Bergman, Werner Herzog, Alfred Hitchcock, Roman Polanski, yikes,
I know.
Jacques Tati, Stanley Kubrick, and Billy Wilder. And Ingmar Bergman was an interesting favorite director because the whole "this was all a dream" thing actually kind of reminded me of Ingmar Bergman's Persona. There's like a scene in that film, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, where two actresses play out a scene and then they switch roles and play out the scene again. And it kind of reminded me of the waking up from the dream with this movie. Okay. Also, fun fact, if anyone ever wants to go to a filming location, that Diner Winkies is actually Caesar's in Gardena, California, and the address is 1016 El Segundo. It's not doxing if you buy food from them, so please be respectful and, reshoot that whole scene with the dude popping out of the back of the restaurant at your own discretion.
Wait, what's the address again?
So it's at 1016 El Segundo Boulevard.
El Segundo, because I looked up Caesar's in
I hope it's still open. I hope whatever restaurant is there is still open, because that, like, whoever is there, I hope people like me who would go to that place and like live out their Winkies fantasy would at least be nice enough to patronize the restaurant.
So I looked it up on Google Maps. I'm not sure if it's open anymore. It's parking. There's cars in the parking lot. Its sign does look like it has seen better days. Because all I did look up Gardenia Caesars, and it took me to the Little Caesars in Gardenia.
Interesting.
Caesars.
Well, hopefully. Well,
the building's there.
Address,
the
though,
building's
1016?
there.
That's good. I know. So fun. As I said about like everyone knows about that jump scare. There's a YouTuber I like who did a video about jump scares, and for his ad read, he shot for shot remade the Winkies scene with the guy popping out of the back. so there you go. But anyway, that's all of the ridiculous amount of notes. So outside of analysis, T, what did you think? You said you didn't hate it. I'm going to predict that it's a 2 out of 4.
Well, since you predicted a 2, now I obviously have to go with a 1.5. No, I'm just kidding. Oh yeah, I was going to go ahead and give it a 2. I don't know. It was very meh to me.
That's fair enough.
It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. It was just, like I said, my biggest problem was the fact that there weren't enough breadcrumbs for me to follow along or to latch onto to build the suspense. So I kind of just started being very indifferent to the characters that were on screen. It was kind of just like, okay, well, let me see what they do next, as opposed to, really kind of getting into the story. I think that's my biggest complaint with it.
I feel that. Part of the reason I like David Lynch films so much, and this film, it was so nice rewatching this, because I knew I really liked this when I saw this as a teenager, but I haven't seen it since, and I was like, hey, is it one of my favorite David Lynch films? I do think it's probably still in my personal top 3. I kind of am probably going to rewatch this a few times to think about it and stuff. But like, what appeals to me is, like, for me, I really like movies that get into my head and I can't stop thinking about after I watch them, and that are like fun to talk about with other people. And so that's what I really like about it. However, it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. One thing I thought, even back when I saw this as a teenager, I thought, wow, the production value's kind of cheap on this. Like, it felt at times almost like a television show rather than a movie. Yeah. Not to say that it is bad, but it feels less sharp, especially like comparing it to stuff that came out at the time, like A Beautiful Mind or Moulin Rouge. Like it feels almost like a 2.5 hour soap opera, like just in production quality. Like, and same thing, like I actually really like the score, but it feels very telenovela sounding, if that makes any sense.
It's a little sedate to be telenovela, but I get what you're trying to say.
You know what I mean? Like it's like synthesizer, and it feels like if you've seen.
I wanted to say this. I really did like the music in it because it was giving me X-Files vibes, and so I don't know why I kept expecting a ghost to appear, and I was kind of disappointed when one didn't.
And that being said, as I said, I do really like the music in this, but it's, as I said, there's something about this movie that feels, and I'm guessing, I don't know, like if you've seen Twin Peaks, it's got kind of that same vibe to it. Not saying that Twin Peaks is not like well shot or anything, but it feels like a TV show. There's something about it. That being said, it, as far as like content and like things to chew on, it's just full of that. I think Naomi Watts just knocks it out of the park. She was robbed. I think she should have won, but she should have at least been nominated for Best Actress this year. It is a shame, but thankfully she went on to do some great stuff right after this. It's funny that Peter Jackson had just started doing Lord of the Rings, because just a few years later, Naomi Watts would be starring in his King Kong movie.
Yeah.
So, good for her. I think that you knocked it out of the park. She essentially played like 3 characters, and she acts circles around everyone else in this movie. That being said, it does have problems. It's not perfect. So 3 out of 4 for me. But I really like it. I mean, as I said, it's like part of the fun is trying to understand what the dream means. Why did she do that? Did she even, those questions.
I will say, I do kind of, I'm a little bit like on that one episode of American Dad where this fairy, little tiny fairy, is flying there. He's talking to Roger and he's trying to explain to him what's going on. And Roger just like swats him and goes, "That's for being confusing." I kind of wish I could do that right now. Oh, I did look it up. The Caesar's up. So they said Caesar's closed in 2017 and the building is behind chain link fencing. It'll probably be demolished, but as of 2021, it was still there.
Hashtag save Caesars, or at least save that building.
Listen,
because that would be really sad.
Listen, you're out there. Why don't you, you chain yourself to the building? Get some exposure.
So the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild are done striking. It's time for a new strike, everybody.
Exactly.
Meet me out there. Meet me out there in Gardena. We're going to save Caesars. We're going to save Winkies.
Start yelling about how their espresso is awful.
David Lynch is like on Twitter, I think. We should like send him that and be like, dude, Winkies is going to close. He'd actually probably
will be gone.
That's another thing. For anyone who doesn't know, David Lynch has a YouTube channel, and like during the pandemic, he would just like post a minute-long video of him telling you what the weather was going to be for the day. It was kind of adorable and hilarious. It was peak like boomer using the internet. But as far as I know, I don't know if he still posts, but he does have a YouTube channel, so go say hi to him. But otherwise, let us know what you think. If you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to give us a comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Especially hit the bell. I've been noticing sometimes I like to check up on our viewers and stuff, but I've noticed we're kind of being buried under similar sounding like YouTube channels, and I don't know why, so please hit the bell. If you're listening to this on any other platform, feel free to check out our backlog. We've got a whole bunch of episodes. Say hi to us on Threads. If you want us to talk about something or review something, please let us know. But otherwise, I am Whiskey.
And I've been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And suck it, Scorsese, your movie bombed anyway.
See you guys next time.
See you next time. Bye. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Esparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks, and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.